So, welcome to another edition of Manifesting Magically with Trevor and Ann. I am Trevor, and with me is my good friend Ann. First off, I'd like to thank everybody who has subscribed to the channel. We're almost at 2,000 subscribers, which is huge. So, thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for liking and watching, and your comments are certainly appreciated, and we try to get to all of them. So, thank you for that. Is there anything you want to add to that, Ann?
No, just double down on the thank you and the welcome.
Yeah, so we thought today that we just discuss, a topic that's on a lot of people's minds, which is money. And also, I would tie into that and security, because I really think the reason why we worry about money is we worry about our security.
I agree. Money is a tool. Most people don't want money for money's sake. We want money because it allows us freedom to buy things that we want, food that we need, roof over our heads. It allows us, if we have enough, to leave a toxic work environment and have a safety net until we get to a new work environment. And there's all kinds of things that it winds into how we can live our lives and the safety and security found in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know in the beginning part of the year on my other channels, uh, I had a very strong intuition that food prices were going to go up fairly dramatically over the summer, and they have. And just having a few $100s extra, allowed me to go ahead and purchase some canned goods that maybe, I wasn't planning on purchasing at the time. Because I grew up in the middle of nowhere, as I believe you kind of did too, and where snowstorms and stuff like that, we're used to needing a bunch of food on hand. So now that I live in a smaller city and I can pretty much get whatever I want whenever I want, it's not necessary to have all that stuff on hand, but it's nice. There's something secure about it.
Very true. And I live out in the country. It's not far out in the country, but it's far enough that I also have, enough food stocked so that if I needed to, I could make a soup or a stew, or whatever I want with the stuff in my cupboard and the freezer. Um, and that makes a very big difference, knowing that I don't need to run out to the store if there's a hurricane or a blizzard coming. I have food on hand and it's going to last me for a few days at least, if not a couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I akin it to like making sure that we have candles or a flashlight during a power outage. It's
Or a
basically the,
generator.
or well, if we're lucky, so our generator. So if you don't mind, Ann, I'd like to just throw some energy cards to kind of start, and then we'll get into this conversation a little bit more. So this is the Moonology deck. Are you familiar with this one?
No, I'm not. Tell us about it.
So I don't remember who the creator is, and I probably couldn't find the box because I use it quite a bit in private readings. Um, but it's got all the different phases of the moons and all the different astrological signs, along with some special moon cards, such as the super moon, things like that. And it kind of, I don't know, it gives a good vibe. I like the way it kind of conveys energies. I think it's quite effective. So I do think this, is going to be a tricky week. So yeah, meditate and contemplate, the new moon in Pisces. I think that kind of says it better than I did in my Trevor's Tarot and Astrology weekly energy reading. I think that's essentially what I was trying to say is that, it's a week to just meditate and contemplate. Like, I don't know about you, but I just have this kind of, I don't know, this feeling of not really wanting to be seen this week. I don't know if you go through those phases.
Well, it is, we're coming up on my favorite holiday of the year. And so sometimes before big things like that, we do like to have a meditative and a contemplative period before the big holidays.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And then also this week is the festival of Diwali, which means our house has a little bit more going on in it. And I think that's part of it too for me of um, you know, just preparing energetically to be around people. That can be kind of hard for some of us.
Yeah, especially for those of us who are introverts and get our energy by being on our own.
I think this is the perfect card for today's conversation, which is spring. And it says, see your seeds grow. And that's, I think, basically what we're going to talk about today.
I
So
love it.
perfect card for today.
It
Okay, so
feels just right for what we're doing.
yeah, so do you want to start us off with some money ideas and money things that you think about? And I guess first we should say we're not financial advisors. Clearly, these are just our impressions and uh, don't necessarily take advice from us. Do your own research. Go ahead.
Very much so. Yeah, as we go into fall, it's kind of this season where you think about preparing for the future, preparing for winter. Um, it's a hibernation season in some ways. And I feel like financially, we're kind of in that place too, at least in the United States, we are, where there's a lot more uncertainty going on in what's going to happen. The stock market may be up right now, but who knows how long that's going to last because it is such a tumultuous period. And so one of the things that we might consider is having a little bit of extra money on hand if we can. A lot of people are in a place where they can't do that, and that's understandable. But if you can increase your savings just a little bit, to have like instead of so emergency funds, right, Trevor? We're supposed to have what generally the personal finance experts say about 3 to 6 months, right?
Yeah, I believe that is correct.
Yeah, and I think in this time and day and age, if we can increase that to more like a year, that might be okay at this point. Just because uh, the job market is getting a little bit slower, so it might take longer to get a job. There's a lot of unknowns, including AI and this and that. Now, that doesn't mean that jobs are completely going away. AI is not going to take over our lives, but having a little bit of extra, like a year's worth, is not a bad idea of cash on hand.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
what would you do with
absolutely.
that extra money? Do you just put
Well,
it under your mattress, Trevor?
and then, well, I do not suggest that. And no. Um, however, I do believe in keeping some cash in the house. I will be honest with you. We probably keep more cash on hand than most. But if you are just starting out building one of these things, to build to a year, I mean, that might take 5, 6 years to build, right?
Yeah.
So, which is why I think that spring card was such a great card about just planting the seeds. So one of the things we started doing when my spouse and I got married about 15 years ago is we have a joint account and then we have our separate accounts because nobody wants to bounce a check because we just didn't talk clearly about who paid the lawn mowing guy, things like that. And what we do is we take the amount of either our rent at the time when we first got married or the mortgage and add in the insurance and the property tax, divide it by two, and that's how much we should put in each month. And then we add 10% to that. And that money goes in automatically from our paycheck, so we never see it. And the mortgage payment comes out automatically. And then every year when it's time to pay property taxes, I write that painful check. Um, you know, but at the end of a year, then there's usually, a little bit extra. And we don't really even know that we had it. And so, keeping it obviously, in like a high yield savings account, that's what we do. But you have your choice there. I do think it's somewhat important to have a little bit of cash on hand in this day and age. I don't know why I feel that way. I'm curious what your thoughts are, but I don't, not a ton, but maybe $400 or $500 in my sock drawer, just in case.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I want to emphasize I love the automation that you talked about. Automating your expenses so that when your paycheck comes in, the money automatically flows to certain pots of money, whether it's a high yield savings account or an account that you pay your mortgage out of, is a really great way to set up your system so that the energy is just automatically flowing nicely. You don't have to think about it. It's not extra stress. And it's absolutely wonderful that way. As far as extra cash on hand, I don't have as much as I used to. Um, I do have a couple hundred definitely in the house usually. I used to have more because I'd pay somebody to snow blow the driveway, but I don't do that anymore. So I don't need as much cash on a regular basis. But it's not a bad idea just because of all the things that can happen, including identity theft. If your account gets hacked, you may not have access to your bank account or your credit cards for, a week. So having a little bit of extra stuck somewhere in the house so that you can access it and just pay the basics for a week is a really good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, for example, why do I have cash at all? Well, one of the reasons is our favorite little restaurant up the street can't really absorb the credit card fees anymore. So they charge a fee for the credit cards and they don't get that fee. So it's not helping them by paying it. So we just pay with cash now every time we go, right? So it's just like, and I think we'll see more and more of that with these smaller businesses in particular, and the bullying from the Visas and the Mastercards and the Squares and the whatever platform they're using. It's really not that uncommon now there for there to be a credit card fee, right?
Exactly, especially for the small business owners. I know several of them who tack on that extra fee just because they can't afford to pay those extra fees that the credit cards demand if they use the system.
So, speaking of money and how does this tie into this idea of manifestation and all these things? And you talked a little bit about energy flowing with the automation, and I agree with that completely. Also think there's other things that we can do. And, you know, so uh, Thursday is going to be a great day to make a money bowl. I don't know if we'll do that on our channel, but I have a video on my channel on how to make a money bowl. Just because it's the first Thursday after the new moon. The new moon will be Monday or tomorrow. Uh, but the other thing that I was always taught with money, and this is from my grandmother, who really wasn't particularly uh, as big of a believer in this stuff as probably we are, is you don't put your cash and your receipts in the same drawer. Receipts are money that goes out, cash is money you want to have staying in. So you don't keep them in the same drawer. So she'd always really stress never putting a receipt in your wallet, put it somewhere else. Or don't put it in your purse, put it somewhere else, especially if you need it. Obviously, if you don't need it, you just throw it away. But um, which I think is an interesting kind of mix of energies, right? Because if you feel like a receipt, sometimes it can, especially depending upon what we bought, it can even spark regret at times. But and then if we look at money in a drawer, generally that sparks a sense of security. And so they are very competing energies. So I don't know if you do that, Anne, but that's something that we do at our house and sometimes even occasionally bicker about because it is kind of not the easiest thing to do all the time. But so we have our receipt drawer for, when it comes tax time, that kind of stuff. And then we have our drawer with some money, and I usually put that with my socks. Not that socks attract money, just because I don't know why. I just do, but
Well, I hadn't heard that story before. And it actually makes sense. I like that. I haven't been doing that yet, but I think I'm going to start for sure. I do keep my receipts right now because I tend to track my expenses. So I went through a tough time financially a few years back, and I've been learning about personal finance since then, learning how to change my money mindset, which involves a lot of work. A lot of it is psychology, and I use magic to back that psychology up and reinforce those good habits. So I think this is a good thing to do moving forward.
and yeah, and like when it comes to purchases that are more than say X dollars or whatever amount you want to set it to be, uh, you know, actually thinking on it for a few days before purchasing it, I find most of the time that I don't really want it, which is, what meditation and stuff is all about, right? So, if we're not listening to the universe and then we're acting on impulse. And I think impulse is where we get ourselves into trouble. And I think this week in particular is going to be kind of an impulsive spending week if we're not careful. Just that's the energy I feel. Maybe it's just for myself, but I don't think so. Generally, this applies to other people too. Because we're wanting to buy happiness, right? Like we're wanting to buy security because everything, especially in the United States, feels so chaotic. And, that idea of retail therapy, it's a real thing. It doesn't actually make you feel better in the long run, but we do it for the immediate gratification, right? So being able to have in our practice that ability to step back and ask ourselves, is this something we really need or want? I think can be pretty important.
Well, and I'd like to add there that when I was in a period between jobs and I didn't have money flowing in, my urge or instinct to buy things was bigger than it is now. Especially for little things. You know, you go into the store and you see some little tchotchke or something. The urge to buy it just to have it, those small pleasures, was a lot higher than it is now. And I don't think it's good to ignore that completely because if you don't ignore that, or if you ignore that emotional need of yours to have something, it can come out in other ways, right? By overdoing it at some point. But if you can limit yourself and give yourself, okay, I can spend this amount of money on small things this week. I know I don't have money coming in, but maybe if I just spend $5 on myself over the week, whether it's a nice coffee or a new pen or whatever have you, it can make your life a lot better and it can have a lot more meaning than just randomly going out and buying stuff to make yourself feel better. So if you're in that position, I wouldn't say don't buy anything. Try to buy as few things as possible, but also don't try and stop yourself from buying nothing, or that's too many double
Yeah.
negatives. Uh, but just keep in mind your emotions and the psychology that goes into that. And if you tell yourself I can't have anything, you may end up overreacting later on and be in a worse place than if you just did something small and simple for yourself. Um, and
Yes.
also, when it comes to that, the small, simple stuff sometimes is just going out for a walk and finding a really cool leaf or a pine cone that you can bring home and put in a place in your house so you can look at it and remind yourself about the world around you. So
Y-
there's a lot of different things that you can do.
Absolutely. Especially if it's a self-care product, like buying a thing of nice bubble bath, for example, or buying yourself the occasional bouquet of flowers, or even making a bouquet of flowers and just putting it in the house. It doesn't so you have to be bought. These type of things that can bring joy and spark inspiration or relaxation even, I think are worth the money, even if money is tight. Um, I know for me, I have to either do yoga or meditate every night, or at the very least, take a bubble bath and have, I'm probably bizarre. I don't know if I'm the only one that does this, but when I take a bubble bath, I'll light a candle and then I turn off all the lights. Um, just to kind of, get that sensory deprivation type of things, but have enough light to where I'm not going to hurt myself either. Um, so I think you raise a really good point. And I know I've gone through periods of really hard times where, um, little things really were important, even if it was just, splurging on a bar of chocolate, it didn't have to be
Exactly.
big. So, um, yeah. So do you have any financial manifestation tips that you want to share?
Well, I was wondering maybe now's the time to do a simple spell for financial security.
Awesome. Show us how to do that.
Okay. So I have a couple things here. Put my tea aside. Um, I have just a regular candle in a holder. I've got also, I made a little thing, and I don't know if it's very visible here. Um, I just drew a candle on a piece of paper. I was thinking this would be good if you're in an apartment and you can't actually light a candle. You can draw two candles. My second candle is lit on the one side and unlit on the first side. And so you can just use that to manifest your energy, starting with the unlit and then flipping it over to the lit when you do your spell and then flipping it back. So it's a nice little way to think about it. The other thing that I have here is I have some pecans. Pecans do tend to be a little bit more on the spendy side, but they are wonderful. And in the fall weather, usually the stores will have them with the shells as well if you want to get the shelled ones. And pecans are good for financial security. They are also good for job hunting. So if you're looking for a job, pecans are a great thing. You can get the unshelled ones, shelled them, and then keep the shells around, put it in a little pouch, and keep it with you for however long it takes, which is a great thing. Once you have the shelled ones, of course, I would definitely eat them after you finished your spell because they have good protein. All right, so we're going to start by lighting our candle. There we go. So flip this one over as well. And we're just going to set our intention around the candle. O gracious universe, provide us with financial security as we travel through these troubled times. Blessed be. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And here we can take our pecans and we can slowly eat them and think about the financial security that we want, whether it's food security, housing security, extra money for whatever you need it for, sort of security, whether it's emergency savings or something on the house that you need to worry about or money for your apartment somehow. And once we're
Lovely.
done, we can let the candle burn out, or if you are leaving the area, blow it out before it's done.
Well, thank you, Anne. That's fantastic. And I always find it interesting how cross-cultural some of this stuff is. So one of the things that's done in the Hindu culture when doing evening prayers or something called a puja, often there are almonds or cashews or stuff placed in the temple, like the temple that's in your house. And then afterwards, those are handed out to everybody in the household to eat. So,
Interesting.
and cashews, of course, are, I think, more used in Indian cooking than pecans, but I don't see any reason why it should matter. Because after all, I think it really is about intentions more than anything. And I love your idea with the candle if you can't light a candle. Um, so I wanted to share with you something that um, I did or have done several times, and I think quite successfully, with maybe the exception of once. Once this didn't work, but um, so the idea is that you come up with a saying, so some sort of saying, right? Like, so for example, mine was one time was I love my new job and our new house. Uh, thank you, Spirit. So in the present tense, right? I love my new job and I love our new house. So this was done while I was looking for a new job, right? I didn't have one. But I knew we were going to move because that's just the way it works in my world. And so what you would do is in the morning, so in the morning, you write the saying 3 times. And then in the afternoon, you write it 3 times. I'm sorry, 6 times, excuse me. And then in the evening, and generally by evening, I mean right before bed, you write it 9 times. So this is a Nikola Tesla thing. Have you ever heard of this, Anne?
I haven't.
Okay, so this is the 369 Nikola Tesla idea of manifesting things. And the idea is that if you add 3 and 6, you get 9, right?
Okay.
And if you add 3 and 3, you get 6. And if you add 6 and 9, you get 15, but 15 is 1 plus 5, right? You break it to digits in numerology, which gets you
Mhm.
back to 6. And so no matter what combination that you add, if you break it down with the numerology idea, you end up back at 3, 6, or 9. So that's the idea. And then you do this for 33 days, which sounds like a big commitment, and it is. But I think this is why you would do this for something really important, like finding
So
a new job and a new home.
that sounds like it has more sticking power, though. If you have 33 days, it takes about a month to build a habit. It's from what I know. And so 33 days, that would be enough that this would really solidify in your head and help
Yes,
build that intention, wouldn't it?
right. So when we were getting ready to, or when we were wanting to move on from the job that I had, I did this and I ended up getting a few different job offers. And then afterwards, because and I think you had visited us when we lived in Missouri years and years ago, uh, I really loved that house. Like I just
Hmm.
loved that house. It was fantastic. And so we were worried about selling it because, when you're moving, money's tight and paying 2 mortgages or mortgage and a rent in our case, I mean, that was tough. So I also did this when we sold that house. I just wrote, our house on blah, 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 blah has served us well. Thank you for making us money.
Oh,
And
lovely.
let that, I do think it's important to put gratitude into these things, just like you do at the end of your spells with the thank you, thank you, thank you, and blessed be. Um, because gratitude is part of the law of attraction, right? It really is. And it's the same, like I joke about having too many canned goods uh, but when the fall comes around and the young kids come up with their food drives, well, I don't have to go shopping or need cash. I just send them off with a box. I'm sure their parents don't like it, but because I'm sure they prefer money than 2 boxes worth of canned goods. But either at the same time, sharing really is. when you can. Now, obviously, I know not everybody's in that position.
Yeah,
And
and you do need to be, sometimes generosity does start at home where you take care of yourself. Put your own face mask on. Face mask? Air,
oxygen mask.
yes, on before you help others.
Y- y-
Um, but
Yes.
yeah, once you can, starting to build that generosity. And also remember that generosity is a mental muscle that we need to exercise on a regular basis. And if we don't practice that generosity and work at it, it will atrophy.
For sure. I think, I think you're exactly right. I think it starts at home, and that's with ourselves. I always like the expression, if you can't help yourself, then you can't help others. Or if you're not healthy, you can't help others. So, taking those moments to really give yourself permission to heal, because sometimes we need to heal. Um, and I don't know of a better way to heal mentally and physically. Obviously there's medical stuff involved if needed, but um, than to just take some time to be either with really loved ones or by yourself and just really be like the hermit, be very introspective and the hermit's got his lantern, right? He's got everything that he needs. So I think that's an excellent point, and that's why I'm a big believer in taking those times out to meditate, do yoga, bubble baths, whatever it is that makes you content. Maybe it's just sitting in your favorite chair, quiet for 5 minutes. Doesn't have to be what I say, right? It's whatever works for you,
And I would add on to that that sometimes our healing process is a financial healing as well.
for
A
sure.
lot of us go through financial trauma. Some people go through it growing up, others go through it when they're later in life. And it takes time to heal from financial trauma just like it does regular trauma. Only it's not always as visible or as knowable. So taking that extra time to make yourself a mug of tea, to take a bubble bath, whatever you need is really important and dive into that psychology of where your money habits are coming from. Where did you pick them up? And how do you change some of them so that they're healthy money habits?
That's an excellent, excellent point. I think, like I've gone through periods of time, particularly when I was younger, um, where, the end of the month was a scary prospect. There wasn't much in my cupboard. Sometimes it was just oatmeal, but that again was like a life lesson from my grandmother of like knowing that, oatmeal and canned tuna, you can sustain yourself on that and canned beans, and they're cheap, or they used to be. They're not so cheap anymore, but um,
Mhm.
I think it's kind of funny if I look back on that because uh I don't know how I did it. Like, to be honest with you, I don't know how I survived on so little, but I did. And there are millions of people doing the same just today. So uh, having that as a sense of gratitude, I think, does put us in a different place as well. I think growth comes from trauma. That's just my thought, but um, yeah, I think having those hard times do shape us, and that's the reason why we maybe walk through life with a different perspective than others.
Well,
I don't
very
know.
much so. I mean, when you and I first met, we were both making below poverty wages at our jobs, respectively. Um,
Yes,
for, for,
we were.
for many years. Um, and somehow we made it. I don't
Yes,
know how, but somehow I was able to get by on $20 worth of groceries a week. Now, granted, this was like what,
early
20,
2000s.
yeah, early 2000s, so
Mhm.
20 some years ago. But still, I look back at that and I think, oh my gosh, how did I do that? And yet, uh, you just find a way. And it didn't For me, the grocery thing didn't seem as much of a struggle. But definitely other things like having a reliable vehicle was a very big struggle for me. Uh, and
Yes.
yeah, and
Yeah.
sometimes, as we grow, we have more, but then we also get scared about losing more. So keep that in mind as you grow as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, the truth is there'll never be enough money in the terms of security, right? We'll always feel like we're not quite there yet. But I mean, I guess maybe if you're Elon Musk, you feel like you're there yet. I don't know. But uh for us mere mortal earners, because it does feel like you're just one catastrophe away from disaster a lot of the times, it just does. So I think
Well,
that's, go
yeah,
ahead.
especially with the medical situation in the US.
Yeah, exactly. So I think
So,
having this meditation and stuff in your practice, I think is important. And I'll just share a story with you. And when we were in school together, and we lived in a very cold climate as well, so not having a car was cold. Although sometimes it was faster not to actually start the car and just walk because it was so cold. But um, a group of my friends and I, we developed this practice where every Friday somebody would make a pot of soup and somebody would bake some bread. And we would get together, and then everybody went home with a little bit of soup in a Ziploc bag or in a little Tupperware bowl for the next few days. And so that sense of community, I think, can help blunt a lot of this too. And I think that's one of the big things that we're lacking right now is like a good sense of community because we kind of don't really know who to talk to or who to trust. You know what I mean? It's a
I
weird
know
time.
exactly what you mean. Yeah, and having that community can be so crucial to building up your financial security as well. In a emotional way as well as a physical way. We don't talk about money as a society in the way that we probably should. Everybody kind of keeps quiet about how much they make at work. We don't talk about our struggles. So it's hard to know sometimes when you look at somebody whether they're struggling financially or not, because a lot of people make it seem like they're not struggling when in fact they might be. They might be mortgaged and have multiple loans, and you don't know by looking at them.
No, you definitely don't. And so I think, taking the like, little manifestation tools that we can, and I think it can just be visualization. Like, I'll give you a crazy example that happened to me like 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, financially, I mean, we were better off than probably a lot of people, but we weren't certainly well off by any stretch of the imagination. And then all of a sudden, I get this credit card application, and you might think, oh no, don't get a credit card, right? Worst thing. But the credit card was gave 5% cash back off of your electric bill and your internet bill and your phone service, which are like the three
Wow.
biggest bills that we had. And it's like, well, I already have the cash to pay them most months. So it's just
Hmm.
like basically it was 5%. I still have that credit card, still use it. I don't think they're happy that I still use it, but because I've never paid any interest on it. I just always pay it off at the end of the month. But 5% on a utility bill these days is a lot of money.
Oh, very much so. You're lucky to
So,
get close to that in a high yield savings account.
well, yeah, exactly. So anyhow, I think this is a great conversation. I think you're right. I don't think we talk about money enough and in the terms of in a healthy way. I think in particular the way, I was raised, money was always looked at as something we never had, and it was always a scary thing. So I think that's probably why, I personally have some psychological needs to keep extra food on hand, for example. But but I think this was a good conversation. So thank you, Anne, for taking the time to talk to us today about that. And do you have anything you want to close with?
Well, I want to say thank you as well. I think we shouldn't stop the conversation here. I think there's a lot of interest in financial talk, and just financial magic in a way that can help us do things to live our everyday lives. So
Yeah,
I think we shouldn't stop here. We should have more stuff on this in the future.
yeah, absolutely. And if you want to try this 369 method that I outlined, see if it works, let us know. So, all right, we appreciate all of you. Please like and share and subscribe. And if you have the ability in your area to hype the video, that would be appreciated as well. So,
Thank you, everyone.
yeah, bye bye.